How's it going, Algebra 2? Today we are going to be doing our last assignment. Can you believe it? Absolutely crazy the way this year has ended. Algebra 2, we're going to jump into some stuff that's going to get you ready for pre-cal. So make sure to grab a piece of paper. We're going to get you ready for pre-cal next year as best we can. Um, and make sure to pay attention to the video and to do some math and to practice your skills. Okay, let's do some math. Let's get into it. That was a terrible intro. Let's just keep it anyways. Let's go. Okay, some things to note. This is the last assignment. All 6 assignments are due at midnight on Wednesday, the 27th of May. And something I just wanted to point out to you guys right now. I went to Delta Math and I pulled up 5 out of your 6 assignments. One of them is not on Delta Math. You can find that on the assignments page. But I went ahead and highlighted every problem that I've done in a video with you. So if you still have zeros on these problems, it's not because I didn't help. It's because you didn't watch the video. Make sure to watch the video to get those problems. They will help you finish the other problems. I always do a couple of examples on the video with you, so that way you can try out like 10 on your own. Over here on the right, I put out exactly how many problems I actually wanted from you from each of these assignments. So as you can see, I try not to give you anything over 10. Like I said, just wanted to point that out. A little petty, but we're moving on. Let's do some math. Okay, one crucial thing about all these problems is that we're factoring to solve. We're trying to solve the quadratic. We're not just trying to factor these two, this trinomial. Remember, it's called a trinomial because it's got 3 terms, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. What's crucial is that you set it equal to 0, set equal to 0. And you will need a piece of paper unless you use the Desmos trick that I'll show you later, which I shouldn't really show you, but I'll show you either way. Let's see. So if we're going to set it equal to 0, we need to add 6 to both sides. X squared minus 3x. Negative 16 plus 6 is negative 10 equals 0. Once we've done that first crucial step, then we have to factor it. So 1 equal to 0. Step 2 is factor. Okay, and in this case, these are what I call level 1 problems. A is equal to 1, so this should be pretty easy. When I say A is equal to 1, remember I'm talking about that A up here. If A equals 1, then the factoring will always look like this when we factor that trinomial. Now, what are the 2 other parts of these factors? You're going to have to kind of work it out in your head. Let me erase some of this stuff here. Okay, so what we need are, let's see, A is 1, B is negative 3, and C is negative 10. What we need are 2 numbers that when we eventually do the FOIL on these, we're going to need these 2 numbers to multiply together to give me negative 10. Okay, and those 2 numbers also have to add up to negative 3. Okay, so you can see where they add up to C. They multiply to C and they add up to B. Really, it's the operation that you have to keep in mind. Okay, so you multiply them to get C, add them up to get negative 3. What 2 numbers can you multiply to get negative 10? We could do negative 10 times 1, but negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9. We need them to add up to negative 3, so let's choose smaller numbers. Let's do negative 2 times 5, but that would equal positive 3, and then you realize, oh, okay, so I could do 2, positive 2, and negative 5. Okay, because if you take 2 times negative 5, you get negative 10. If you take 2 plus negative 5, you get negative 3. So really, we need to add 2 to this one and subtract 5 from this other factor. Now, since these are both, since the expression is equal to 0, we are allowed to do this thing where we can say, okay, x plus 2 equals 0, or x minus 5 is equal to 0. Both of those solutions will make the entire thing 0. So really, you just have to switch the signs here. Because essentially, if you solve for x here, subtract 2 on both sides, you're going to get x equals negative 2. Okay, if you add 5 to both sides on this equation, you get x equals positive 5. Okay, so these are the 2 answers. Now, when you go over to Delta Math, negative 2 and 5, let's remember that. when you go over to Delta Math, well, I can put in -2, but how do I put in 5? The answer is it's ready for you to have 2 answers. And with a quadratic, you should expect 2 answers. If I click this plus button right here, this plus button lets me add as many answers as I want. Remember, it's a quadratic, so you want 2. In this case, it was -2 and +5. Submit. Sure, this is your answer. Yes, it's going to look weird in brackets, but just remember that you have these 2 boxes for your 2 answers. And it shows us that it's complete, and it shows you the steps while you're doing it. I also want to tell you that while you're doing the problem, you can watch a different video made by somebody else that could help you on this exact topic. So make sure you use that resource if you like. Now I'm going to show you how you could cheat this assignment on Desmos. So if you go over to desmos.com/calculator and you switch and you type in the equation that it gives you for any of the problems on the following assignment, you type this equation in, and it's going to cross the x-axis in a couple different places. As you can see, I typed in the last problem, and it crosses the x-axis at -2, 0 and 5, 0. So as you can see, the answers you can actually find with the graph. So you could just type this in and find it with the graph. I'll make sure after all these problems to show that example, going to Desmos and plugging it in. Okay, let's do one more level 1 problem. Remember, you want to set it equal to 0. We want this equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract a 2x from both sides. And just so it equals 0, I'm also going to add 32 plus 32. So that way everything on the right side cancels. On the left, I get x squared plus 14. 14x minus 2x is going to be 12x, because these two will combine to become 12x. Okay, and then on the end, we're just going to add that 32, and let's cross it off just to show that we've taken care of it. That equals 0. Okay, here a is equal to 1, b equals 12, and c equals 32. So we need 2 numbers. Well, let's set up the factoring first. I know that I'm going to have 2 x's here. Okay, we need 2 numbers that multiply to give me c, which is 32, and 2 numbers that add up to give me b, which is 12. Okay, so numbers that multiply together to get you 32, we could try 16 and 2, but that would give us 18 when we added them up. We could do, let's see, smaller numbers. We could do 4 times 8. 4 times 8 is 32, and 4 plus 8 is 12, so those numbers will work. It's going to be a plus 4 and a plus 8. And once you're at this point, you could really skip to the answer. You could just say, okay, that means x has to be -4, or x has to be -8. And what I just did was I switched the signs for my 2 numbers. If you don't like doing that, remember that it's just a process of setting them equal to 0 and then solving that equation for x, both of those equations. Okay, and here on Desmos, you can see that I got -4 and -8 on the x-axis for this quadratic. Problem number 3. Let's see, before we can find out a, b, and c, we need to set this equal to 0, so let's go ahead and subtract that 5. So that way we get 0 on the right side, and on the left we get 5x squared plus x minus 4. Here we get a, b, and c. We get a is 5, which is different. These are what I call level 2 problems. Level 2 problems is when a is greater than 1. So here a is 5, b is equal to 1, and c is -4. So we have those 3 pieces of information, and you'll see that in level 2 this makes things a little bit more complicated. First of all, I know that I'm still going to have my 2 parentheses. This is still going to factor into 2 different factors. There's one issue though. I can't just put 2 x's here. Whenever you FOIL something, you multiply 2 of these things together, think of there's 4 objects in here. Pretend like there's 4 objects in here. At first, we're going to have to take that x times x to get x squared, but we need 5x squared. So what we need instead of x and x is the only way to get the number 5 by multiplying 2 positive integers. 5 times 1. 5 is prime. If you take 5x times 1x, you'll get 5x squared once we FOIL it. So that's where we're going to start, 5x and x. And as you go through this process, you're going to notice some things that are similar and some things that are different from level 1 problems. First of all, if I were to FOIL this out, okay, things get a little bit tricky. Let's imagine there are two numbers, r and t, plus t. And I'm going to leave these as a standing point, and we'll use those as we go along. Okay, we already said we would get 5x squared. If we continued to FOIL this out, 5x times x would be 5x squared. But if we continue, 5x times t is going to be plus t times x. Oh, t times 5x. Okay, if we multiply r times x, we're going to get plus r times x. And if we multiply r times t, well, here's the thing. I don't know what r and t are, but I know that when we're done, we are going to need a -4 on the end to keep it in line with my original equation. So I need these to, r and t need to multiply to c, which is -4. I already know there's going to be a -4 here. Okay. Here's the other part where it gets weird. I know that this has to be a b times x. We're trying to have 1 times x. Okay. So essentially the way to do that is we need to get these two x terms to add up together. The way you figure that is, well, if I factored out an x from this expression, I would get 5t plus r minus 4 and a 5x squared on the front. Okay. If we think of this as b, okay, because we have ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, if you think of this as b, we know that b is equal to 1. So really, and I won't get this complicated for the next couple examples, but just to clarify things, we need two numbers that multiply together to get you c, and also those two numbers have to fit into the following pattern. 5 times one of them plus the other is equal to 1. Okay, so these are my golden standards that I have to hold these imaginary numbers up to. Okay, we don't know what they are yet, so we have to categorically think about it. Okay, first place to start in finding these two numbers is to consider what two numbers multiply to get you -4. You could do -2 times 2. You could do, let's see, 1 times -4, -1 times 4. Okay. So there's a bunch of different ways, and you have to pick two of them that fit into both of these equations. So let's see. If we take, let's see, this is going to be difficult. Let's try down here. Let's try 1 and -4. So this will be 5 minus 4, which is 1. Well, okay, I promised I just guessed. I didn't know that was going to happen. If we take 1 times -4, we'll get -4. 5 times 1 is 5. Plus -4 is 1. Well, there you go. I found the two numbers. It's 1 and -4. Now, the other thing that matters is placement. If you know that 5 has to get multiplied by 1, then you have to put the +1 in the other factor. Okay? So that way, when you FOIL it, it'll end up right here. The next thing we'll plug in is the -4. Those were my two numbers. And the way to check this is just to make sure it all works out when you're done. So let's make sure. 5x squared plus 1 times 5x is just 5x. Minus 4 times x minus 4 is equal to 0. And positive 5x minus 4x is positive x. So it works. We were just checking it. Okay. So now we take this equation. 5x minus 4 times x plus 1 is equal to 0. And we consider the two possibilities just like before. 5x minus 4 is equal to 0, or x plus 1 is equal to 0. Okay. From these two equations, we can get the two answers. Now, the first answer is going to be pretty easy. X equals -1 if we just subtract 1 on both sides in equation 2 here. But on equation 1, we're going to have to do a couple more steps. If we add a 4 to both sides, we get 5x equals 4. Divide both sides by 5, we get x equals 4/5, or 0.8. Okay, and here's me on Desmos doing it much easier than I just showed you, to my own detriment. Here are the two answers exactly as I said they would be. Here you go. Use Desmos. Okay, problem number 4, same as always, set it equal to 0. Subtract a 4x, add a 3, plus 3 minus 4x. That'll cancel it on the right side, give us 0. On the left side, we have 2x squared plus, these make 11x. 2 plus 3 is 5. Okay, so here's our equation. We now have a, b, and c. 2, 11, and 5. Okay, so now that we have these three parts, we can start to factor. Once again, 2 parentheses, set equal to 0. We can't just have x times x. We're going to have a 2 in there somewhere, so that way we get that 2x squared term. Let's see. To get the other two numbers, we're going to have to do that extended thinking once again. Once we get done with our FOIL, eventually at some point at the very end, these two mystery numbers will be multiplied together. And when they do, I know they're going to give me a positive 5. So let's start writing down some equations for my mystery number. I know that for a fact, when we multiply them, we're going to get 5, because that's what we had in my equation. We're going to get c. Okay? If we follow the FOIL process a little bit more, if I take 2x times this mystery number, so I'm going to write that as 2 times one of them, and then we add the other mystery number times x, so that's 1x, so it's going to be plus the other mystery number times 1, which is just that number. That's going to be equal to b, which is 11. So here in this case, I would definitely use Desmos. Definitely go over there, check it out. In fact, I'll even put it up here on screen, but I won't spoil the answer. Let's see. So you can use Desmos, but let's try to figure out what these numbers are. The only way to get positive 5 is by taking 1 times 5. But note that it does matter where you put these two numbers down here in the second equation. You can't just put 1 here, essentially, because you'll get 2 times 1, which is 2, plus 5 is 7. So you have to put them in the right order. This is 2 times 5, which is 10, plus 1, that's 11. So 5 and 1, plus 5, plus 1. Okay, now we have to make sure we're putting them in the right spot in the equation. Okay, if we take, and this is really easy to check yourself after this. If you take x plus 1 times 2x plus 5, if you check this, you'll notice that it goes wrong pretty quickly. Essentially, it's the same problem as putting these two in the right places. You have to make sure that the 2x gets multiplied by 5, so it has to go on the right side. And that 1x has to get multiplied by 1, so it has to go here. Okay. Just to check, 2x squared plus 10x plus x plus 5 equals 0. So our check worked. So we have our two equations. 2x plus 1 equals 0. That will lead you to the answer x equals negative 1/2. Then we also have equation number 2. X plus 5 equals 0, which gets us the equation x equals negative 5. Okay, so there are the two answers for that one. Like I said, you could use Desmos. Remember to add them as two different answers in Delta Math. Let's do the last problem. Okay, last problem. Set it equal to 0. So I need to subtract a 3 from both sides. 5x squared minus 22x plus 8 equals 0. Okay. We already had a 5x squared before, so I already know how to deal with that while we're factoring. Okay. The next thing we need to do is find two numbers that multiply to give you c, which is 8, and two numbers that also you can write in the following equation. 5 times one of them plus the other equals b, which is negative 22. Okay, so now we have to find these two numbers. Two numbers that multiply to give you 8. We could use 4 times 2, but since it's negative, we're probably going to need negative 4 and negative 2. Can we do it this way? Yes, we can. Negative 4 times negative 2 gives you positive 8. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20, plus negative 2 is minus 2, which equals negative 22. So perfect. I'm going to put the negative 4 on the right side because it has to get multiplied by the 5. And I'm going to put the negative 2 on the left side. If we check this, 5x squared minus 20x minus 2x plus 8 equals 0, and that checks out because that'll be a minus 22 there. So we get our two equations. 5x minus 2 equals 0. which gives you the answer, skipping some steps here, x equals 2/5 or 0.4, I believe. Okay, and you can enter them as fractions in delta math as well. The second equation is x minus 4 equals 0, which means that x could also be 4. So there are the two solutions for that. Have a good day, guys. Work hard. Remember when all these are due, May 27th at midnight. If you have any questions, feel free to email me and message me on Canvas. Hope you're having a good day. Have a nice one. If you're not, goodbye.